Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to The Inner Voice with Dr. Foojan Zeine, only on LA Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Inner Voice Show. I'm Dr. Foojan Zeine, and this show is about all that matters for you and in your life. I talk to experts to bring the latest research in the field of human sciences and cognitive sciences, and we talk about what becomes more of your daily conversation, what works, what doesn't, what matters to you. And today I have exciting news and about the new studies that are out there about stress and social network, and then have the opportunity to talk to Dr. Arthur Ciaramicoli, and we're going to be talking to you and to your heart and whatever that stress brings to your life and all the ways then you can actually release the stress. We'll be right back with the latest research.
Dr. Foojan Zeine is a psychotherapist, a marriage and family therapist, and a life coach with more than 27 years of experience. She is the author of the Awareness Integration Model, which has been researched and published in numerous international journals. Dr. Foojan has offices in Beverly Hills, Irvine, and Woodland Hills, California, and also consults online and by telephone. Make an appointment with her today by calling 818-648-2140 or go online to www.foojan.com. That's www.foojan.com.
So in a new study in Nature Neuroscience, Dr. Jadip Bains and his team at the Cumming Schools of Medicine's Hodges Brain Institute at the University of Calgary have discovered that stress transmitted from others can change the brain in the same way as a real stress does. The study in mice has shown that the effects of stress on the brain are reversed in female mice following a social interaction. This was not true for male mice. We know that already. The females can be together and release stress anytime. But it's really interesting that just being in somebody else's premise of them having the stress, that the mate also feels the same in their brain. So brain changes associated with stress underpin many mental illnesses, including post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety disorder, and depression. Says Dr. Bains, professor in the Department of Physiology and Pharmacology and member of the HBI. Recent studies indicate that stress and emotions can be contagious. Whether this has lasting consequences for the brain is not known. The brain research team studied the effects of stress in pairs of male and female mice. They removed one mouse from each pair and exposed it to a mild stress before returning to its partner. Then they examined the responses of the specific population of cells, specifically CRH neurons, which control the brain's response to stress in each mouse, which revealed that networks in the brains of both the stressed mouse and naive partner were altered in the same way. The study found what was remarkable was that CRH neurons from the partners who were not themselves exposed to an actual stress showed changes that were identical to those we measured in the stress mice. Next, the team used optogenetic approaches to engineer these neurons so that they could either turn them on or off with light. When the team silenced these neurons during stress, they prevented changes in the brain that would normally take place after stress. When they silenced the neurons in the partner during its interaction with the stressed individual, the stress did not transfer to the partner. Remarkably, when they activated these neurons using light in one mouse, even in the absence of stress, The brain of the mouse receiving light and that of the partner were changed just as they would after the release of stress. The team discovered that the activation of these neurons causes the release of a chemical signal, an alarm pheromone, from the mouse that alerts the partner. The partner who detects the signal can in turn alert additional members of the group. This propagation of stress signals reveals a key mechanism for transmission of information that may be critical in the formation of social networks in various species. Another advantage of social networking is their ability to buffer the effects of adverse events. The Baines team also found evidence for buffering of stress, but this was selective. They noticed that in females, the residual effects of stress on neurons were cut almost in half following time with unstressed partners. The same was not true for males. Bain suggests that these findings may also be present in humans. We readily communicate our stress to others, sometimes without even knowing it. There's even evidence that some symptoms of stress can persist in family and loved ones of individuals who suffer from PTSD. On the flip side, the ability to sense another's emotional state is a key part of creating and building social bonds. This research from the Baines Lab indicates that stress and social interactions are intricately linked. The consequence of these interactions can be long-lasting and may influence behaviors at a later time. And we'll be right back with Dr. Arthur Ciaramicoli.
Have you ever wished you could just wake up one day, reach across your nightstand, and hit the life reset button? Let's face it, the struggles and frustrations of everyday life leave millions of women and men around the globe yearning for a new way. And the new way is right here in Life Reset, the awareness integration path to create the life you want, by Dr. Foojan Zeine. You can get it now at Foojan.com or Amazon.com. Life Reset, the awareness integration path to create the life you want. You deserve it.
Were you recently injured in a car accident? Then you need the law offices of Aria Thadakar for your free case evaluation. Don't let the medical bills pile up, and don't let the insurance companies try to settle your claim for a few $100s. Call 714-464-3246. The law offices of Aria Thadakar serves all of California. If they don't win, you don't pay. So call now, 714-464-3246. This is a paid-for attorney advertisement by the law offices of Aria Thadakar of Orange, California.
Dr. Arthur Ciaramicoli is a licensed clinical psychologist who has been treating clients for more than 35 years. He's a member of the American Psychological Association and the Massachusetts Psychological Association. Dr. Ciaramicoli is a contributor to the Creative Living Foundation, was formerly the Chief Medical Officer of SoundMinds.org, and is also in private practice. He has been on the faculty of Harvard Medical School for several years, lecturer of the American Cancer Society, chief psychologist at Metro West Medical Center, and director of the Metro West Counseling Center and the Alternative Medicine Division of Metro West Wellness Center in Massachusetts. In addition to treating patients, he has lectured in Harvard Health Services, Boston College Counseling Services, and the Space Telescope Science Institute in Baltimore, as well as being a consultant to several major corporations in the Boston area. He's appeared on CNN, CNN-FN, Fox News Boston, Comcast TV, New England Cable News, Good Morning America Weekend, The O'Reilly Report, and other shows. He's been a weekly radio guest on the Healthy Family on Sirius Satellite Radio and Holistic Health Today, and has been interviewed on People's Pharmacy and The Gary Knoll Show, and more than 24 other radio programs. He is the author of The Curse of the Capable. The Curse of the Capable, The Hidden Challenges to a Balanced, Healthy, High-Achieving Life. Another one, Performance Addiction, The Dangerous New Syndrome, and How to Stop It from Ruining Your Life. And another book, The Power of Empathy, A Practical Guide to Creating Intimacy, Self-Understanding, and Lasting Love. He has authored the Anti-Anxiety app, the Anti-Depression app, and the workbooks Transforming Anxiety into Joy. His latest book is The Stress Solution, Using Empathy and Cognitive Behavioral Therapy to Reduce Anxiety and Develop Resilience, was recently published in China. Welcome to my show.
Thank you very much. It's great to be with you.
You have been busy.
Yes, I was getting a little tired listening to you read that. I said, "Is that me?"
That is you.
A long career, Foojan. A long career.
Yes, and an amazing one. And thank you for going after what is so important for all of us, because no matter what's going on in the field of psychiatry and psychology kind of moving ahead constantly, it seems like anxiety and depression and stress are constantly going up. What do you think about that?
Well, I wrote this book on stress because I'm particularly concerned with the rising stress rates in our country and throughout the world, actually, but particularly in the United States. And our 3/4 of the visits to primary care physicians 2 years ago were due to stress. And 70% of people in the workplace say that they experience stress on a regular basis, either physically or emotionally. And 3/4 indicate that they wake up every night due to stress. So we're in a time where people are feeling very stressed, and Americans say that they have fewer friends today. Trust has decreased, as well as there are indications that empathy has decreased, prejudice has increased.
Yes.
So we're in a time that I think many people have grave concerns, and I tried to write a workbook that I thought would address this major topic and help people learn how to balance their lives.
Definitely. That's really, really helpful. And you talked about empathy, using empathy and the cognitive behavioral therapy together. Now, my essence of being a therapist for about 20 years is empathy is a cornerstone of what we do as therapists or counselors, or that's what we offer as the basis. And but you have written a book about empathy. There's something more that you want to share with us about empathy.
Well, empathy is the capacity to understand the unique experiences of another and being able to respond to them. It's not an emotion or a feeling. It's a capacity that we're born with. But if we don't practice it or we're not taught how to express it, it atrophies like an unused muscle. But, when I wrote The Power of Empathy, Foojan, in 2000, I suspected that it caused brain changes, but we couldn't prove it at the time. But today, it's very different, because we know from functional MRIs that the giving and receiving of empathy produces the near miracle transmitter oxytocin, the love hormone, the hormone that's produced when women are pregnant. And what does oxytocin do? Through the giving and receiving of empathy, oxytocin is emitted in the brain, and it reduces anxiety. It reduces the stress hormone cortisol, helps us live longer, makes us recover from illness and injury quicker. It promotes a sense of calm and well-being. It increases generosity, protects against heart disease, decreases inflammation. Importantly, it reduces craving for addictive substances. And most importantly, I think, it creates bonding and an increase in trust of others. So it decreases fear and a feeling of insecurity with others, and it makes us open for love. So back in 2000, we couldn't prove that the giving and receiving of empathy actually caused this tremendous neurochemical change with all its benefits. But today we know that's true. And conversely, I think when you were talking about the research that you were citing before at the beginning of the show, I was thinking of this concept of secondhand stress. Yes. In contrast to giving and receiving of empathy, what happens when we don't listen to each other, when we interrupt each other, when we're living with a significant degree of stress, as many Americans are today on a daily basis? we release the stress hormone cortisol, which does the opposite of oxytocin.
Yeah.
Cortisol causes negative thinking. It causes weight gain. It actually enlarges fat cells in the body and makes us crave sugary substances. So it's one of the chemicals that actually contributes to weight gain that isn't talked about very much. Mm-hmm. It causes inflammation, hair loss. It breaks down muscle tissue, causes flabbiness, depression, anxiety, and it literally kills neurons in the memory center of the brain. Mm-hmm. So we have one kind of relating that causes the release of one hormone that is very destructive, and then we have another kind of relating, empathic relating, that causes the release of oxytocin that provides all of those tremendous benefits.
You talked about the stress rising dramatically around the world, not just U.S., but around the world. And that's why you wanted to also write the book, so that people become aware of what's going on with them and how they can de-stress themselves or manage their stress. Why do you think the stress rates are rising?
Well, I think that we move very fast. We don't sleep very long. We work too hard. We love with half a heart, and then we wonder why we're stressed. Mm-hmm. I think people have a great deal of difficulty calming themselves, knowing how to be present, and in essence, knowing how to love. We're in a society that focuses so much on achievement and appearance that I think we have placed character and the ability to relate and form heartfelt connections on the low end of a totem pole. I mean, we don't seem to believe that it's very important anymore. And we're so hungry for achievement, and I think that comes about because when we're lacking something, when we grow up lacking something, and we start to achieve, we finally get the applause and sense of self that we've longed for so long, and then that becomes addictive. That's what I call performance addiction. Mm-hmm. You know, the belief that perfecting appearance and achieving status will bring us love and bring us respect, and it's really a myth because I see people, and I know you do as well, that are working so hard, working long hours, wanting more and more and more, and yet their relationships suffer and they end up in divorce. They have a strained relationship with their children, and as they get older, their health is sacrificed because they don't tend to exercise, they don't tend to eat well, they travel a lot, they're on the go a lot, and again, they're not able to calm themselves and produce the neurochemicals that are necessary for a long, happy life. You know, empathy calms the emotional brain so we can perceive others and ourselves accurately, and it allows us to slow down and be reflective of what's going on in our lives rather than speeding through our lives. And I think the fast pace today, the pace that doesn't give us time, or we don't think we have time to actually listen and form trusting and important relationships with others is a major source of this level of stress.
I have to share something with you. I started, I've done online therapy for a long time. Since 2005, I even wrote a book about online therapy when there was just chat and not video. So I figured, hey, I like to do that and I want to do it more. So I looked at a couple of websites that were out there for online therapy. So I joined one, and immediately there were almost like 30 clients which were pouring in the 12 hours. And I was going back to back, signing them every half an hour and working with them and, being that empathic, therapeutic person every half an hour with a new client and going on. Arthur, by the end of the night at 10 o'clock, I was so exhausted that had no empathy left in me. And then when I went and, I went home and my maid is looking at me like, do you want food? I'm like, I don't want anybody to talk to me anymore. I mean, I was just spent. And the next day, the same thing happened. And I found myself keep getting angrier and angrier and angrier. It's like the part of me that wanted to help and be a help to everyone else when I wasn't taking care of myself was leaving. It was just, I was becoming nasty in my own head. I mean, thank God I have the ability to shut my mouth and kind of, put myself in a corner when that happens until I rest. But I can see how much the ability to suddenly be out there in the world of internet, that it just, like you open yourself up and then suddenly you get bombarded with so much that you can really put yourself into an exhaust mode. And when you were talking about, success and going forward and doing that is we have opened ourselves so much to the world that a little bit of an opening at times would flood us. And then in this interaction with people, I found so many couples, and that's why they were using online therapy and coaching, so many couples that are on the go because of their jobs. They don't even get to be with each other because they're all over United States just working. So it's really shifting the dynamic of individuals and their hygiene and rest and even relatedness.
Yes. Well, you're giving an excellent example of, you're trying to do your best and you're caring for people and you're being empathic. But if you're not kind to yourself and you don't pay attention to your own body, we overdo it. And then we don't sleep well. And then we get up the next day and we have to do it over again. And we're living with a level of cortisol, the stress hormone, in our bodies all the time. So that's why I wrote a chapter in the book on self-care, because I think it's crucial. It's crucial to exercise daily, to eat well, to sleep well, so that we can be the best not only for ourselves but for other people. I get up in the morning and exercise every day, not because I always want to, but because really I feel like I'll cheat the people in my life if I don't.
Right.
Because I know the difference of how I feel when I have that neurochemical change, when I exercise aerobically and I put myself in a position to be present. And when I'm present, I'm better. If I slept 5.5 hours last night and I had 3 martinis and I got up and had a couple of cups of coffee with 2 sugars, I would be a different human being. I would not be present in the same way that I need to be.
Yes.
Or want to be.
Absolutely. You also have spoken about authenticity and that authenticity reduces stress. Can you say more about that?
Well, when we substitute our inherent personality for one that's trying to please to gain acceptance and love, it's a failing proposition. It's a pretense. And pretense is a burden that's depleting, and it also makes it difficult to maintain intimacy as closeness to other people is based on being open and genuine and vulnerable. Authenticity attracts others in powerful ways and allows us to feel comfortable in our own skin. So authentic relating enlivens the spirit and gives us the energy and confidence to go out into the world, tolerate stress, and maintain resilience so that we can come home with our self-respect and integrity intact. So when we're authentic and we have the courage to be ourselves, to be vulnerable, we're producing a brain change again. We're connecting with other people because authenticity, as I said, attracts others. So when we're authentic, rather than pretending to be somebody else or trying to please in a way to gain acceptance and we lose our own voice or what we truly believe in, we know we're pretending and we don't really feel cared for because we know we're not letting people know us. If I don't let you know me, even though you say you like me, how can I believe it when I know that I'm hiding aspects of myself? So when we're authentic, we let go. We have the courage to be ourselves, to say what we think in a reasonable, tactful way. It calms us because it produces calming neurochemicals. Authenticity and empathy produce oxytocin, produce serotonin, the kind of neurochemicals that people use pharmaceuticals for, but we can produce them naturally. It's what I call the soul's pharmacy. We have a pharmacy in our head that we can produce on our own if we know how to be genuine, authentic, and empathic.
And
we can make a change in that regard that makes people want to be close to us and makes them want to talk to us and open up themselves.
Also, when we lie to ourselves or go into a pretense, the other side of it also produces more anxiety and depression because we're lying to ourselves. And the brain, wasn't there a research that showed that when we're lying, that part of our brain, because it knows that it's lying and that's not a natural thing for it to do, it comes back with a higher level of stress hormone and anxiety. That's one aspect. Another one is that we're always waiting to be found out because we know we're lying.
Because it's fearful. right?
Yes.
If I'm pretending and then it's like people on a first date.
Yeah.
When you're pretending and you're not allowing yourself to be known, there's a fear that sooner or later you're going to find out who I am.
Yeah.
And then what?
Yeah.
Then are you going to walk away? So it certainly doesn't make you feel good, and it makes you feel tense. When we feel tense, we release cortisol. And cortisol causes very black and white, narrow thinking. So we don't think as well. We don't express ourselves as well. We become very, very small-minded. It's actually what produces a great deal of prejudice, because prejudice really causes the release of cortisol too. You know, that's why, as you know in the book, I write a chapter on prejudice, because that's so very important to me, especially at this time in our culture.
So let's define. Can you define prejudice and then tell us what you mean by it's causing the stress?
What I mean by prejudice is you're misperceiving. You know, and cognitive behavioral therapy, from my point of view, basically focuses on misperception. You know, when we generalize,
right.
When we use black and white thinking, catastrophizing, mind reading, magnifying, it means that, you know, I look at your face or your color, or I know your religion, or I know where you come from, and I'm already making up my mind who you are. But I don't know who you are. I'm only looking at the surface, and that's where empathy comes in. Because as I said earlier, empathy calms the brain so we can slow down and really enter into the world of another, because that's what empathy does. It allows us to understand that unique person standing before us,
right.
Not judging them by the cover of the book. You know, you wouldn't buy a novel just because it has a beautiful picture of the ocean on it. Mm-hmm. You'd want to know a little bit about the author or read some reviews of the book.
Also,
and that's what happens in life.
Yes. Also, I'm sensing that the word prejudice, for me, it also has that if I have a negative experience, or I have a common cultural experience that has been handed down to me, and somehow I fixate it and generalize it to a huge amount of population without necessarily having to do reality check or being with them. And you're saying that also empathy on the other side, it makes it more personal. It's not the generalization. It's more of getting to know the person and feeling the person who's in front of us.
Yes. You know, Foojan, I've been doing group therapy for many years, and not long ago I added a woman who was going through a divorce to the group. And she came in, and somebody asked her, one of the members asked her, well, you know, how come she joined? And she mentioned, well, I'm going through a divorce, and I just need to gain some perspective, and it's a big change for me. And she was, I think, 50 years old, yes. And one of the women immediately jumped in and said, you know, you got to get a hard-nosed attorney. I made the mistake with my attorney. You got to get a Boston attorney. You know, you never know what can happen in court. And she was going on. And one of the men was shaking his head. And I said, Roy, why are you shaking your head? And he said, here this woman, Ruth, came in, and, you know, she's only spoken for 2 or 3 minutes, and already we're telling her she needs a hard-nosed attorney. We don't know anything about her marriage or about what's going on in her life. Mm-hmm. Now, see, sympathy rushes in to console. That's what the first woman was doing when she reacted and said, you need a hard-nosed attorney. People often get sympathy confused with empathy. The man's reaction was more empathic, because what is he saying? He's saying, I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know the facts. So then finally one person asked her, they said, well, what are the facts? She said, you know what? When I was a senior in high school, I was pregnant. We felt at that time we had to get married. My husband is a very good person. We have a lovely 26-year-old daughter. But we were never in love. We got married because we were embarrassed, and we thought we should get married, and our parents were really pushing it. But we never really had that kind of love. We're good friends. We don't need hardcore attorneys. We're going to go through mediation. We're fine. We're settling everything. My husband's a very ethical person. She said, so I'm not worried about that. My worry is more what my future is going to be like. Like, am I going to have another relationship? Yeah. I would like to be in love, and so would he. We've never had that experience in our entire life. Mm-hmm. So, see, she told the story. She was giving the facts, but as you were saying, the first person jumped in quickly based on a generalization. She had a bad divorce, so she assumed this woman is in the same boat, but she wasn't. Mm. And the key to empathy is slowing down. So when you slow down, you listen more carefully. When you move in quickly, we tend to generalize. We tend to make up our minds just very quickly based on impression, based on appearance, based on the way somebody walks or talks, and it can often be a grand mistake.
Sometimes it appears that it's easier if we just utilize the categorization skills that we have to move on with the next and categorize in order to create safety for us. But it's funny that the same thing in the illusionary concept that we can categorize in order to protect ourselves, which is in some level becomes the prejudice, installs fear consistently and creates anger to protect the fear, and also causes stress. It just seems like it induces it in us. And then the same way that you were talking about empathy and love producing, the compassion producing something else in our network, the opposite, which is the prejudice, then it would also communicate that fear and anger and sends it around.
Yes, exactly. When we have stress, and oftentimes people are unaware of it, we're producing a neurochemical change that produces fear. And when we have fear, that chemical change makes our thinking very narrow. Mm-hmm. It's not expansive thinking. It's not using a wide lens camera. It's a very narrow look at another person. And sometimes it's a very narrow look at ourselves. Mm-hmm. I always say to people when I'm teaching that I think one of the greatest achievements we can make in life is to reduce the prejudices against ourselves and others, to see ourselves accurately and to see others accurately. And I think perception is the key to not being stressed, because if you're perceiving the truth, how we perceive is directly related to how much stress we have. And when we're generalizing or we're magnifying or mind reading, we're producing stories, we're creating movies that actually don't actually turn out to be true. How many times people believe a certain something, either about themselves or about someone else, and then when they find out the facts, they feel foolish because they never slowed down enough to look into the heart of another person to find out really what the truth was.
What are you thinking about the amount of rage and anger that is being fed much more in the media, in social media, and it's rising the amount of stress just by production of anger. And everyone kind of, and I'm generalizing, I know, I take full responsibility for the sentence I'm about to say, which is generalization. It's almost that in the name of, again, protection, taking a stance, but it's done through a lot of anger and rage, and almost, they act exactly the same way as what they claim their opponent or people who they don't like have. And it's really stress-producing just to be informed with the news now.
As you know, I've been in practice a long time, as you have, and almost every client on a daily basis brings up the political climate.
Yeah.
I have people that come in and say they couldn't sleep last night because they watched the news. I've never in my life had so many people talking about the political climate than before. It's never been this way in my lifetime. Because what's happened? What are we seeing? What are the models that we're seeing? Without getting into particulars of personalities, but someone says something about someone critical, a political figure, and then that person insults the other person, and then that person insults her or him. The lack of civility, the lack of empathic relating, the impulsive, sadistic, quick reactors is such a poor model for our young people. It's a horrible model for our young people. Instead of showing that we're able to absorb a criticism and respond to it in a reasonable way, and if you don't believe it's truthful, you look to the facts. That's why I accent empathy so much, because empathy is fact-oriented. It's oriented to discerning the facts, slowing down, developing a dimmer switch, being able to turn the dial down so that you can actually absorb the truth about yourself and other people. And if you can't take in feedback from others, whether it's critical or positive, how can you learn anything?
Right.
Sometimes people criticize us. Maybe it's not said in a very kind way, but it could be true.
Yeah.
And if you're going to grow in life, you need to have feedback. But we're in a climate right now where that's a bad thing. If you criticize someone, if you make a comment about what you believe, then you could be chastised. Facebook, Twitter.
Yeah.
It's horrible, the comments people make about each other, and it's filtering down to our young people.
Yes.
You see it in high school, you see it in grade school. It's horrible. The things that the kids are writing about each other, but their parents are doing it. They're seeing it in the media every day. And it's a terrible example. It's a terrible model.
I think everyone has some prejudices, and everyone has negative beliefs and opinions. That's normal. But I think that what I'm seeing that is shifted a bit is this entitlement about voicing whatever shows up in your head, and maybe under the name of authenticity, or maybe under the name of I'm just being honest, or maybe under that concept in the name, versus, I don't need to vomit anything that shows up in my head. I mean, I can be particular about what I choose to express and how I choose to express, even though it might be negativity. As I was driving to the studio, a car was right beside me in the freeway, and they had a flag of the person or the party and all of that is not of my liking, or I don't endorse it. So it was interesting. My first reaction was like, wow, that's interesting, of in this climate, in this way, for this person to be so bold and do that. And then it dawned on me that it's like, isn't that the beauty? Isn't that the beauty of being in a country that it all has the ability to be out there, and they all have the ability to be different together? Especially for me, who's been an immigrant, it's like, that's the beauty, to be with each other and not all, follow the same path, and then have the ability to be out there with respect to each other, even though we might not agree in many of, the political or social or just anything that's out there, that we don't have the same opinion.
Yes. It's been said many times, but I think your point is, Foojan, that we're more alike than we are different when you look beyond the surface. And I think, there was an experiment at the University of Queensland in Australia. I think I mentioned it in the book, where there was an influx of Chinese students to the Australian university. And there was some consternation about, these Chinese kids are coming in. And they did an experiment where they had a Chinese student live with an Australian student, and a Chinese student do projects with Australian students. And then in the other group, the kids could do what they wanted, which is the Australian kids stayed with the Australians, the Chinese kids stayed with the Chinese. The prejudice that existed with the kids that did not intermingle with each other remained exactly the same.
Yeah.
The relationships between the Australians and the Chinese who lived together and did projects together, they became great friends. Why? Because they found the commonality. They found that they're not so different.
Right.
It's the same thing with experiments that have done with Palestinian and Israeli kids.
Right.
They're taught to hate each other from the time they're born. But then when they're in the same dorm, we've done experiments here in Massachusetts where Palestinian kids and Israeli kids have lived together in a dormitory for the summer. And they become friends because they find the commonality. The familiarity begins to make them feel more comfortable, and they start to talk more. Their kids who talk about their girlfriends, or are they attractive, or do they speak well, or are they athletic, and all of a sudden they realize that you're a 16-year-old and you're not so different than me. But all my life I've been told that you're totally different. And so the exposure has something to do with reducing the prejudice.
Very much. And the empathy that gets created. I had a clinic called Personal Growth Institute, which I had a lot of interns from school doing their residency with me, and we had almost 60 therapists who were from all nations and all religions. And I actually remember where we had an Israeli therapist who was assigned to a Muslim woman. And the Muslim woman didn't know that he was an Israeli therapist who was raised and born in Israel. So she came into the office and started talking about, the prejudice that was there and was put upon her about the people she was with, and they were Israeli and all of that. And it was interesting and I remember my intern calling me about 11 o'clock at night and saying, I don't know what to do with my own self of being there, being empathic toward her while I'm getting hit constantly by these, stabs of what she was saying. Yeah. And amazingly, after about 4 sessions, these two bonded in such a way of empathic and seeing each other and really understanding each other's point of view in who they really were, and coming off of that, the concept of generalization and coming to see another human being as another human being. And that's the beauty of what you were talking about, of exposing ourselves, our heart, our authenticity, who we are, and the capacity and the ability to see another human being as that, and how much that also brings down the stress. Because if we think that the world is against us, guess what that does to our stress?
Oh, yes. But what a great opportunity. I mean, that's a wonderful opportunity to have so many people of different backgrounds interact with each other, therapists and patients, or just everyone together. I mean, that should be a book, Foojan.
Yeah. You speak about image love in your book. What is image love?
Well, image love is again when I focus on, love being based on appearance and external measures. I often talk about it as being one resume meeting another. So image love is often a function of performance addicts, people that are really so focused on their resume, achievement, and appearance. So, and they have difficulty loving. They base their own lovability on their daily performance. And unfortunately, they expect the same of their partners. So they're constantly comparing and contrasting themselves and their partner to others. And they find it easy to fall in love, that binding and blinding effect of early sex and early phases of a relationship. It creates an illusion, if you will, an image of love. And they don't really know the other person. So over time, the real person is revealed, as we were talking earlier, and the partner becomes very disappointed. They both become very disappointed, and that is what I call image love. It's not based on really knowing the character, the inside thinking and emotions of the other human being. It's not a bond based on empathy, knowing the other. It's a superficial bond based on looks and achievement, and that's what I call image love.
And there's also the stress that is getting created with people creating an image and being addicted to creating that image on the internet and the social media. And I mean, some of them are creating careers out of just creating images out of nothing, just image. Their career is creating an image, and that's all it is. And it is amazing of how much of that puts so much stress on people, because upholding that type of an image and a facade, that's a full-time job.
Yes, and as you know, people expend so much energy on something that isn't even real. I mean, people talk about how many Facebook friends they have, and some of the men I see talk about these war games where they're interacting through the internet with doing war games with people all over the country, all over the world. They don't know any of these people, but they talk about them as if they're their friends. And it actually takes away from learning how to make real relationships. It again is based on an image and somewhat of a delusion. Because look, they're very, as I say to my patients who say, "Oh boy, I saw my cousin on Facebook. She's doing so well," or "I saw this one, he's doing so well," and I said, "Do you ever see people on Facebook with a very sad face talking about their depression?"
Sure.
I mean, people don't post those kind of things. You don't know what that person is all about. It's sort of like imagining that being married to a celebrity would be wonderful.
Yeah.
How would you know that? Or people go to a concert and they say, "Oh, she's a great person," and "Oh my God." And I say, "Well, she's a great singer, but you don't know how she is as a person." And then people get so upset. So think of the Me Too, the Me Too movement, when people are so disappointed that they find out that this star or that star or this media host actually abused a woman, and they're so taken aback by it,
Yeah.
which they should be. But also they're so surprised because they feel like they know these people because they see them on TV every day,
Yeah.
just like people who see people on Facebook every day.
Yeah.
And it creates this false perception of others.
Yeah.
And it also, I think, in terms of your point, it creates the idea that I need to be like that, to be popular, to be loved, to fit in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then so we go into judging ourselves instead of being empathic to ourselves, which then creates the more stress. We have about 5 minutes. So you wrote this book because you had a certain message that you wanted to give your audience. So please tell us the full message and how is it that they can support themselves, releasing the stress. And I can't say that they can become stress-free. I think that's a delusion, but at least minimize it.
I would say that what I would hope people would take away is that the way you perceive is going to produce or limit the amount of stress in your life. And try to dedicate yourself every day to learning more about the truth about yourself and the truth about other people. And the key to this is expanding your range for empathy. Empathy is such an important capacity, professionally and personally. Even in the business world now, many corporations are teaching empathy training because they find out people are more successful because you can understand what your customers really want and you relate to your coworkers on a better level. Leaders are better and more respected who have empathy. So empathy is the key to perceiving accurately. When we perceive inaccurately, and we all have grown up with certain prejudices, as you said earlier. So try to, on a daily basis, learn how to perceive accurately and ask yourself if you're looking beyond the surface or you're just reacting quickly. When we react quickly, we usually react with distorted thinking. When we slow down and use empathy, we attract people, we gain more respect, and we see the truth in others, in ourselves more readily.
Yes. So for everyone who's listening, Dr. Ciaramicoli has his latest book that is called Stress Solution, Using Empathy and Cognitive Behavioral Therapy to Reduce Anxiety and Develop Resilience. And you can find that book in his website, balanceyoursuccess.com, balanceyoursuccess.com, or go to and join his Twitter, DocAPC, DOCAPC. So balanceyoursuccess.com, and the name of the book is The Stress Solution, Using Empathy and Cognitive Behavioral Therapy to Reduce Anxiety and Develop Resilience. It was recently published in China. How come China?
I don't know. That's kind of interesting. It's funny, Foojan, the Power of Empathy, which is now 18 years old, was published in 2000, and The Stress Solution are both being published in China in August. So I don't know, but there's an interest there. So I'm not sure where that came from, but it was, I'm happy to have the work exposed to more people for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I think that the whole world at this point needs to release the stress and learn empathy. Those are two major concepts that would be really helpful. Thank you so much for your conversation with me, your time, all that you're doing. What's next? I'm excited. What's next?
I don't know. I mean, I have a full-time private practice. I'm spending more and more time with our little grandchildren. We have 1 4 and 1 1. So a lot of fun with them. And I'm always busy in my practice doing a little writing. I'm not sure about another book or not. I'm kind of playing with some ideas. You know, by writing, it can be a long, lonely process.
Yes.
This book took 3 years to write, so.
Yeah, and you have your apps, depression apps and anxiety apps.
Yes, those apps have done well too. So that was fun putting those together.
And people
SoundMind was the website online that was very interesting to write for.
Can people still use those apps from iTunes or no?
I don't believe they're functional right now. SoundMinds is not online at the moment. Ed Mohibi, who's the CEO, has taken a breather, and he's exploring some other things. So I'm not sure where that's going to be in the future. It's kind of up to him since he's the owner of all of that property.
All right. Well, everyone, go to balanceyoursuccess.com and find the latest book, The Stress Solution, using empathy and cognitive behavioral therapy to reduce anxiety and develop resilience, from Dr. Arthur Ciaramicoli. Thank you again for being with us. For everyone who was with us, thank you for listening with your heart. Thank you for taking it in. If you have any questions or if you have any suggestions, please email me. Go to my website, Foojan.com. And as I said again, hey, I'm getting into online therapy again, and I'm really liking online therapy and coaching. So if you need to do therapy or coaching with me online, then go to my website, Foojan.com, and I would love to be with all of you. Until next week, create an amazing life for yourself and everyone around you. Bye-bye.
You're listening to The Inner Voice with Dr. Foojan Zeine, only on LA Talk Radio.